Welcome to the Char Chit Chat, a podcast exploring all things biochar related, coming to you from a small sheep and tree farm in the deep south of New Zealand. Hi Annie, thank you for joining me today. I'd like to start our chat today by asking, where are you currently residing?
Hi Dylan, thank you for having me. I feel quite privileged to be on your podcast. So thank you for that. I reside currently in North Otago in Maheno on a 50-acre small farm.
Okay, great. Thank you. And where do you say you are from and where did you grow up?
So I was born in Hamburg in northern Germany. I grew up in Hamburg for the first 12 years of my life. And then my parents moved on to southern Portugal and we kind of started a bit of a nomadic lifestyle from then onwards. So, yeah, I guess I did grow up in Germany, definitely in a German culture and then in a Portuguese culture. But looking back, I feel as if I grew up not so much in a particular country, more surrounded by those beings that gave me solace, that always were nature and plants and animals in particular as well. But I'm definitely from Europe, but now I'm a New Zealand citizen.
Yes, and when did you first come to New Zealand?
I came here straight after school when I was just 19 and spent a year backpacking around the place, just hitchhiking and woofing and going from farm to farm. And cried my eyes out when I had to leave because the visa expired. And then I kept coming back for shorter holidays and other little work stays. And I just, never lost that connection. I've always felt really drawn to this country. And now, my husband and I came back to New Zealand 14 years ago and haven't really left since, other than, on short sailing trips and things like that. So it became home 14 years ago.
Okay. So Hamburg, then Portugal, and then backwards and forwards to New Zealand. Were you going back to Portugal each time or were you going back to Germany?
Both. Yeah. Most of my family is still in Germany, so I've always kind of called back in to go visit, but I've never gone back to live there. We spent some more time living in Europe, sometime in Portugal, but also I did most of my studies in Austria, in Vienna, and then always back to New Zealand or Australia as well for more work experience, hospitality and winemaking and things like that.
Okay. What age bracket do you fit into?
I love that question. I would say I fit into the age bracket between 45 and 46.
Oh, okay, that's very small. I know. Okay. Right.
I don't have a problem with my age at all. I love my age.
Okay, well you can just say it out.
Yeah.
All right. And what keeps you busy these days?
Oh, that's a big one. I don't even know where to start. There's so many things that I just don't have enough hours in the day, really. There's so many things I really want to do, and often, I can't fit them into the weeks. So, with the family, we live on 50 acres that we bought as bare land with hardly any fences and not much reticulated water on it. So that was 3.5 years ago. So we're still very busy developing that in an infrastructural way, but also obviously gardens and planting trees like mad people in spring and in autumn, and building little sheds and building things for the animals and bringing in more and different animals, but also the animals that we do have, all our grazers, I manage them holistic management way. So there's a lot of electric fences going up and coming down and going up and coming down and shifting animals very quickly and very regularly. And there's also chickens that need moving, and then there's ducks and all the other things, and there's horses that need training, and there's 3 children that need homeschooling. And then because we live off grid, there's all the other things that come with that, like, firewood, lighting fires for hot water, for cooking, for baking bread, harvesting things from the garden or bringing in other produce from somewhere else, and then fermenting and preserving and composting toilets and all those things that come with I guess you could call it a small homesteady type situation, where we are really passionate about making sure that what we put into our bodies in a food way is as close to its natural origin as possible. So that also means that there's a Jersey cow that we can hand milk, but we also source raw milk from other sources. Yeah, so there is a lot of things like that. There's also books. I love reading. I've just finished A Bold Return to Giving a Damn from Will Harris. I highly recommend that book. It's been a super inspiring journey to go on. Yeah, I'm reading books that I learn stuff from. So I'm also reading Holding Change at the moment from Adrienne Marie Brown, which is really interesting, about emergent strategies. Yeah, Team Human, I'm just revisiting that, Douglas Rushkoff. Just really inspiring stuff in regards to, do we need individualism, or are we not actually set up to be a team of humans as in a herd animal, and wouldn't that be a much better way to live and to go about life? In between, obviously, I did start a small business a little while ago called Stewards. So that is a biological spraying contracting business. So I own one of Steve Ericsson's cyclone sprayers, and I service small holdings up to 15 hectares who want some biologicals put onto their land, whether that's orchards or pastoral lands or even just gardens. So I just tow it behind a four-wheel drive, and it's just the most amazing little machine that Steve has thought through so well and so amazingly. I love working with it, and I also use it a lot on our land, working on improving our soil here, which is not an easy task. It's there's some things that go well, and then there's things that go not well. Yeah, so there's heaps of learning, and just never enough hours in the day, really.
Yeah, great. No, that makes a lot of sense to me, because I've been living in a similar way for the last 15 years or so. So permaculture and healthy food, healthy eating, healthy minds, all that kind of thing. So yeah, very good. I'm glad to be able to have this chat with you today. Can you tell us about your interest in biochar, please?
Yeah, so I can't even, I was thinking about it earlier today, thinking, when did I even come across biochar for the first time? And I can't remember. I just can't recall when that was and who through, or was it in a book or in a podcast, or I don't know. I can't remember. I do remember that one of the earlier practical applications in my life, when I actually started making it myself, was after attending a workshop with you. When you came up to the Waitaki Community Gardens and you held a workshop here on biochar. And that was super inspiring and really cool to attend. So, of course, then I walked home and I made sure I got some drums and made some biochar a couple of times, and then realized yield, like when you live on 50 acres, it would be different if I just lived on half an acre, obviously, and just needed some flower beds. Yeah, but I've actually also played around with making small amounts of biochar in the firebox of the home-wood, which was really fun. But once again, the yields are just way too small for what I need. So I've kind of given up on making it myself, to be honest. But the interest is definitely there, and I use it. So I just source the biochar from Southland Carbon now, from Andrew and Tula, who I think are doing an amazing job. And yeah, it's a great product that I can just order and they drop it off, or it gets shipped here, and it seems to work really, really well that way. Yeah, but going back to the interest, so as I said, I can't remember when it first popped up in my life, but it's part of this long chain of things that happened in my life. And I think it all started when I was pregnant with our first child. where all at the sudden I realized, oh, there's a new being growing inside my body. So I need to be really careful now what I put into my body, because she is going to build her cells and her future human existence out of what I eat right now. So that made me rethink everything that we had in our household, starting from cleaning agents to, obviously, I stopped drinking alcohol right away, which was an interesting one because I used to be a winemaker and a wine writer. So we always had an abundance of beautiful, beautiful bottles of wine being sent to us for me to write about them. But yeah, there were no withdrawal symptoms. It all went really well. And then I started very actively learning about how did people in the olden days, how were they eating well without having to go to the supermarket, without eating processed and packaged foods? How were they preserving them, and where was there a benefit or not? And so I came across lacto fermentation, obviously, and being from Germany, sauerkraut and sourdough are quite a common thing there. So I just dove right in and learned so much about, do I want to drink processed milk, or would I rather have raw milk only? And all of a sudden there was kimchi and sauerkraut on the table, and we started making all our own bread. And that then led to us actually opening up a sourdough bakery in Waihi in the North Island in New Zealand. And we kept banging on about, you are what you eat, and it's really important what ingredients you use. But then I just didn't quite make that connection all the way back to the soil. So it took me a lot longer. A few years later only, I realized that it doesn't only matter how good your ingredients are, because it actually matters so much where they've come from, what soil they were grown in, or what plants did they eat if you're eating meat. Yeah, in order to get our soils back into that state of a healthy microbiome, I feel that biochar is a really amazing tool to be a carrier for the plant beneficial bacteria that I am reintroducing into the landscape, where most places in our land definitely had been quite deprived, and it still is. You can still see how hard it is for this land to rebalance itself and to reabsorb those necessary microbial communities. And I guess, we have a lot of wind, we have a lot of drought. When it does rain, it kind of rains full on, and then everything gets pugged, and then it doesn't rain for months. It's not really an easy one, but I firmly believe it's possible, and I can see improvements which are happening on our land. And even my neighbors are kind of starting to possibly be a little bit more open-minded about, our long grass and the different way of management that we do. Yeah, so it's a very long and interesting journey, and lots of trialing, lots of erroring as well. But that's why I'm passionate about biochar, because I feel it can carry that microbiology into the soil, and it won't just let it sit there by itself, because, then if the northerly comes in and it's windy and hot and dry, the microbiology can't survive unless it's already got a really good soil sponge that it can just move into. But that's where the biochar comes in to provide shelter and housing, and almost acts like a slow release capsule, so to say, for those bugs, and also for the food that we're putting on, like plant extracts and other things as well.
Yeah. All right. So did you start already growing food during your pregnancies in Waihi, or have you only really focused on growing your own food once you've got to some land here in Maheno?
We did have gardens in Waihi, but a lot smaller. Nice veggie garden and fruit trees and stuff, and our own chickens, and we had a goat for a while, and I was making goat cheese and stuff like that. And so we were trying to do as much as we could on our own little piece of land. We actually had meat rabbits there as well. And then we were running our own pigs that were eating the bakery scraps. They weren't on our land, they were on our friend's land, because he had, more space for them. And they lived a very happy life under beautiful big chestnut trees. So it was definitely a start of that, but because of space, it was quite limited, or more limited in what we could do. And also, I guess, time. The kids were, they all three of them came one after the other, bang, 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 until we pulled the handbrake and said, okay, that's enough. 3 kids is plenty. Let's stop right here. Yeah, my time was quite eaten up by looking after them. And Ron was very busy working in the bakery, so he would get up most mornings at 2 a.m. to go to work. And then obviously when he came home late in the afternoon, there wasn't much energy left for too much farming or gardening as such. But yeah, we did have some things happening, and there was definitely the interest, but the realization of we don't just need to, I guess, well, in Waihi as well, the climate it's so easy to grow stuff. I actually thought I was a great gardener all of a sudden. And whereas in Australia, I even managed to kill my rosemary, right? And in Waihi, everything grew. I didn't have to do anything. I didn't even have to water it. You just chucked some seeds into the soil and it grew, and it was lush and beautiful. And I mean, yes, mildew was a bit of a problem at times, but it was so easy. And yeah, so I didn't really give the soil a lot of thought. And I'm a viticulturist and winemaker, so I did study soils at university many, many years back. But and I think that's what made me think that I know about soils. But looking back, what I learned was more that the soil is your growing medium. And yes, there is certain minerals, and there's some chemistry that's in there. And if there's biology, you probably want to get rid of it because it might eat your roots. Yeah. It was really horrific, actually, what we learned, and so incomplete. So I'm not sure whether I think it was just not quite as well known maybe at the time, more fringe knowledge. So our professors just weren't very big on too much microbiology, other than wanting to kill it. And yeah, so it really, I'm surprised. I'm really surprised how long it took me to realize how important soils are and what they do for us, for everything on the planet, right? Like the whole climate situation, the rain, the water retention, the erosion, the rivers, all of that. But even things like, and I think that's where I started dipping my toes into microbiology, when I started to realize that the kids were really happy to play in a lot of dirt, and I let them do that. And then people would criticize me for it, thinking I was about to kill my kids. But surprisingly, my kids were very, very healthy, and still are to this day. We don't have issues with allergies or autoimmune or anything, really. Like most of them have never been to a hospital, and that we don't really need doctors much. So I mean, that could be coincidence, but maybe it was that the immune systems were quite well trained from early on, and that they got colonized by the right bacteria because they were allowed to play in the dirt and shove it into their mouth and do all those things. There was no sterilizing agents ever. It was always quite earthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you've done two main things. One is that you took note of what you were eating, and I wish way more women would do that when they do get pregnant. And then, yeah, you've let them be in an environment that's alive. And yeah, I see many children now going nowhere near soil for years and years. They're literally kept away from the soil in case they get dirty. Yeah, it's very sad, and I think those are the two main reasons why we have very, very unhealthy populations in general nowadays. It's because of those two things. People don't care what they eat, and they don't really know enough about the environment that they're actually living in. All right, it sounds like you already had some gardening experience and stuff, and so you already knew how to grow plants. When you've moved to Maheno, though, tell us a little bit about the journey to do with the biochar and the sprayer. You've only been there a short time, and you said there's a lot of work to do with fences and so on. But how have you so quickly been able to get a little business going? Tell us a bit about that.
Well, Well, you can just make a business, right? It doesn't mean it's making me any money, because it's not. Maybe I should have added that right from the start. So it's in existence. The sprayer is there. I use it a lot on our own land, and my neighbors use it. And there's the odd paid job that I do for other people. But I guess there is a big need for marketing and more education to even let people know that this exists as an option for them, but also to reach those people that own a lifestyle block or a small farm and might potentially be interested in this sort of service, but just don't know it exists, but also maybe they don't even know what it is, because everyone is so brainwashed into their NPK fertilizers, and if your grass is not growing, this is what you need.
Yeah,
I think the biological approach is still quite just not as well known. And I've come across people here in our region as well that have said, oh yeah, well, yeah, regenerative farming, yeah, that's all very well and wonderful, but it doesn't work here. Which I don't understand why it wouldn't. And I mean, obviously there's certain tools and there's certain methods that work in one situation and don't work in another, because I feel that the way we need to look at farming in order to make it better and more resilient in the long term is obviously going back into working in tune with nature. And that's always going to work. How is that not going to work? Like, nature has all these amazing ways of doing stuff. And the more we can listen to that and try and copy that, and think that's what I'm trying to do with the biological sprays, is my main intent is to copy what nature would do. So when I make a plant extract and I spray that onto the land, say, it's a nettle extract, I quite specifically put the nettle back onto the land where it was growing in abundance and where maybe it wasn't so much wanted, so that the soil has basically grown the nettles, and instead of the nettle falling over and decomposing on top of the soil and it all taking a whole year-long cycle, I harvest the nettles and I make an extract and I spray it back onto the land, so that that whole process that normally would take a year, growing and decomposing the thing, is going to take just a few weeks. So I'm just speeding that up where I can. That's really all I'm trying to do. And the same with microbiology, where I'm trying to see what does my compost grow here on my land if I put in the produce or the excess things that we harvest off the land, the twigs and the branches and the long grass. And then I take that microbiology and multiply it, and then I put it onto the land, because I think that is the microbiology that is at home here and is going to help the land become a little bit more closely to what my compost heap is, which is obviously an abundance of bacteria and fungi and all sorts of things.
So you've made compost from ingredients on your land, and then you ended up buying this sprayer because you wanted a way to distribute that biology and nutrients over the land to improve it. Where did the idea of putting biochar in with that spray come from? Was that from the guy who makes the sprayer, or did you hear about that or see that idea somewhere else?
It was more of observing what sort of environment and climate we are in here, which is very windy in spring and in autumn and in between as well. And our land is quite exposed because there's just not very many trees on it. Well, there's a lot of trees on it now, but they're tiny, all the ones we planted. So when the winds come, they really howl through here. So often we get a decent amount of rain, and then we get wind for 2 days, and we're back to rock solid soil because the wind takes all the moisture away. So that's where I kind of started thinking, what can I do to make sure that if I put this tiny little, these poor little microbes onto the land, where are they going to go? How can they be sheltered in a way? Obviously, I can leave the grass quite long and all those things, but a lot of them, I want them to be quite close to the soil so that they go into the soil, not so much into the foliar of the plants, even though, that's another option. And sometimes it's hard to know where they actually end up. But biochar, just because of the massive amount of surface areas it has and all the little holes, and there's just so many spaces for them to hide in and to be protected. And obviously biochar holds moisture really well as well, so they don't dry out as quickly. If I just spray them onto some of my hillsides, that even when the grass is long, when the wind comes, it just, we have red clover wilt on us because it's just too dry. It's crazy at times. And obviously, it's a matter of soil condition as well. If the soil was already a lot better, that wouldn't happen so much. But it's a long process, and on steep hillsides that are facing north, it's quite an uphill battle to keep something on the land that will make the plants grow, so that then I can put my animals on there for them to trample the plants down and put their manure on and all those things. So you kind of need that container. And I don't know if you know of Martina Glodowska, I think that's her name. She wrote a research paper on biochar as a carrier in, I think, 2014. Have you heard of her?
Oh, I haven't.
I found her online, and Martina Glodowska, that's her name. So she put this thesis together. It's called Biochar as a Potential Inoculant Carrier for Plant Beneficial Bacteria. And it very clearly suggests that is one way of putting the microbes onto the soil with a bit more protection, so that they don't wither right away when the conditions aren't ideal. And I think there's a lot more research that has been done since then on the matter. There's other papers out there, but hers is just, I think it's the first one that I read, and it just made a lot of sense to me. Yeah. And we have Southland carbon not far away, so it just seems like a no-brainer for me to use that and help the microbes along the way.
Yeah, I think in the past, the compost itself has been used as that carrier of the microbiology in a spraying situation, because people hadn't have thought about the biochar or didn't know about the biochar. I think compost to a large degree was just used in that way. It was assumed that the larger particles would land between the leaves and go down, sit on the ground, and then the biology would be in contact with the ground. But it's nowhere near, I don't think, as good as biochar. Is not holding on to the water as strong and tightly, and I think it will dry out quite quickly in a windy situation.
Yeah, it does. And so what the cyclone sprayer can do, because it's got really big nozzles, the biggest one is a 15 millimeter nozzle, so I can put out big chunky biochar, but also quite a bit of slurry compost or vermicast, and I do that too, but usually I try and put biochar in with it because of exactly those reasons, because I do feel that when I put on a slurried vermicast and the wind comes and the sun hits it, it's like it turns quite hard and dry very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And I'm just not sure. Well, we know that a biochar just has so much more surface area inside of it that it's just the perfect carrier, really, I feel, for microbes.
Yeah.
And then obviously on top of that, being able to put carbon back into the soil and knowing that it's going to stay there for a long time and is not going back into the atmosphere. I think that from an environmentalist point of view is a really, really good thing to do as well.
Yeah, and even if if it was very windy and very hot and the sun happened to kind of kill anything that was in the biochar itself is still there, and it will over time be incorporated into the soil. So even if all your biology happened to be killed off, worst case scenario is the biochar is still on the surface and going to get incorporated into the soil at some point and will still be there in hundreds of years' time. So it's got its built-in fail safety already, so that's great. Would you be able to give us a little bit more detail, or are we getting too many trade secrets if I ask you a little bit more about the fine details of how you actually do the spraying? So i.e., what are you putting into your container and all that? I mean, this is more for if other people have sprays, I guess, but how much of that detail would you like to give away?
I don't have any hard and fast rules. I think it's a Well, for me, it's quite a learning journey still too. I did learn the other day that it's really important to take your compost tea bag out of the bucket before you tip the contents of the bucket into the sprayer, because the pump really didn't like the compost tea bag.
Yeah.
So that's one
yeah.
thing I can tell you, like, just don't do that. Just make sure you take it out beforehand. And every sprayer is quite different as well. So I love the cyclone sprayer so much because I can vortex the water. And I'm quite a firm believer in a lot of things, energy. And there is this theory around structured water, which is so much more biologically active and healthy and perfect, really, and not chaotic. And that's, when you look back into Rudolf Steiner's biodynamics, where we create a vortex to stir any sort of sprays and applications, Steiner talked about the energies of the cosmos, and whatever you want to call it, it just, to me, it rings very true that water is not just water. And it's all H2O, right? They say. But then actually there's other people who say, well, that's not quite true. There is not only H2O, there actually is H3O2 as well, which is the same thing, but just organized in a different manner. So that's the structured water. And that's what we can achieve through the vortex. So when the water is kind of curled in a more natural way, like it would come down a river or a stream and bounce over rocks and creates those mini vortices, I can do that in the sprayer. That's how Steve has designed it, so that we can structure the water to have the best water possible to put onto our land when we apply whatever we are applying. So that is one thing that I feel quite strongly about. And that's, also why I think the cyclone sprayer is a really, really cool sprayer. There's lots of other ones out there that can bring out slurries, but as far as I know, none of them can make the water spin that way. And other than that, I just also love being able to bring out a lot of thicker things. So I can put quite a bit of vermicast in there if I've just put it through a coarse sieve earlier on, to know that there's no bigger sticks in there or anything like that. And I can mix it all in together with biochar, make a big thick slurry, and then just dilute it with a little bit of water, and then I spray it out. And obviously, there's certain times of day when applications are better, so I try to spray ideally after rain, and then ideally super early in the morning or later at night, not when the sun is very high, once again to protect the microbiology. But generally speaking, I don't think I know enough about it yet to really give out recipes, because I'm playing around with lots of things. I also inoculate seeds with vermicast extracts and things like that, or EMs and humic acids and all sorts of stuff. And I put them into the spray and I spray them out at the same time, just to add a little bit of extra diversity into the pastures. And not all of them come up, but quite a few do. I used to just put out seeds by hand before I had the sprayer, and that was a bit of a waste of time and money, really, because I was just feeding the birds. But this method seems to be working a lot better.
Yeah. And you said you can do up to 15 millimeters, right?
Yes, that's the biggest nozzle.
That's quite a big seed. So you could literally put out a pea seed then.
I haven't tried pea, but I could, yeah. I can bring out quite big chunks of biochar. So before Andrew and Tula at Southland Carbon started grinding their biochar into this quite fine powder that they're selling now, the original size used to go through the 15 mil nozzle. Every now and then it would clog up, and then that would be a bit of a messy job to get the clog out of the line. But so I'm really grateful that now we can get it in a smaller size. But it's amazing. Lots of things can go through there. And
so how big is the container, the tank?
1,200 or 1,000 liters, something like that.
Okay.
And so that also means, how most applications are done in a very in a very, very tiny amount. I can obviously choose to use small amounts of actual agent, but I always bring up quite a bit of water at the same time.
Yeah, and what's the kind of width when you drive along a paddock? What's the width that it's spraying out to?
it depends on the nozzle size. So the bigger nozzle, I think it sprays 4 meters either side or up to 4 meters. So there's different adjustments I can make to the pressure in the hoses as well. And then the finer it gets, it kind of sprays it out in a half moon behind the sprayer. And you can also adjust your nozzle, facing this way or that way if you only want it spraying out one side.
Yeah, so you've got about an 8 meter width that you are driving behind. So if you've got it filled up, how many acres or how many hectares are you doing in one application?
Once again, depends on the nozzle. If I'm using the bigger nozzle, then more liquid is being put out in one go. So I usually travel at about 7 kilometers an hour. So that one, I need to look at my sheet now to tell you exactly how many. I usually do, with the bigger nozzle, I do about 1 to 2 hectares. And that would be the super coarse one, but I could also use the 10 mil or the 8 mil or the 6 mil, and then I can cover a lot more ground because it's spraying a lot finer.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a great tool. I think every community should have one to use, because like when I first started out, I was using watering cans, and you can't do 50 acres with watering cans. You just can't. It's impossible.
You can't even do half an acre.
No, exactly. So, well, and then we were shoveling compost out of wheelbarrows, right? And just throwing that onto the land. I've got child labor, but not enough. It's just
Not enough. No.
I mean, it's a big investment for a small farm, a sprayer like that. But I was happy to spend that money because when I discovered it and when it all started coming together for me, I realized, well, I have a desperate need for this sprayer on my land, and other people may not know about it yet, that they have this need, but they will, not all of them, but eventually other people will come to that realization too, that they actually need a sprayer of this sort to help their land. But obviously on a small holding, it's a big task to buy expensive machinery. So I thought, well, other people do, they cut hay for me. That's what contractors do. So I can be a small scale contractor for lifestyle block owners and help them use the sprayer on their land for when they need it. So that means we don't all have to have one. And I get to do stuff that I love, because I just love talking to people about their paddocks and their soil and their plants. And that's how the whole business idea kind of came about. It wasn't that I wasn't looking for a business to create. It just made sense to go down that track. And I'm not in a hurry to spread the word about it, because I think it will spread anyway. It's going to be something that people will be looking for more and more, because there's more and more people realizing that their land needs something, a little bit more of something. And hopefully people will discover it's not NPK. It's actually long-term biological health and healthy microbial communities. And we can kind of give them a bit of a leg up by feeding them and by bringing out starter cultures. And it's a bit like, inoculating with dung beetles. We just inoculate the soil with the microbes, and then hopefully the conditions are improving, and then the conditions are right enough for them to hang around and to keep breeding and to keep bettering the soil. And eventually it'll just turn into this snowball cycle where it's just going to get better and better without us even doing anything. But initially, I think it's, as you were saying earlier, those things take a long time to reestablish nature where it has been for decades. It's just been driven out of the soils and out of the systems. And there was not a native plant on this piece of land when we bought it.
Yeah.
There were no native birds, nothing. But it also took many, many decades to bring it to this point. So it's not going to be an overnight thing for us to bring it back to what it used to be. And it probably is never going to be what it used to be. It'll be different, because we also plant exotics and all of that. And I'm a big fan of planting willows and poplars. which are obviously not native, but they are easy to propagate. It's the one tree that I can very cheaply establish and grow and coppice and chop down and turn into wood chips. And I've got a tree. I also plant lots of pittosporums and corphis and all of those, but it just takes so much longer to grow them. And we need trees to go up quicker so that we have shade, so that we have big roots in the ground, so that there's somewhere for the birds to go and all of that, and somewhere for the animals to be in the shade with and to rub their bums at, because it's just what a farm needs. It needs trees.
Great. And so what's your plan with the business? Do people make up their own concoctions and what they want to be sprayed out, or are you offering a full tailored thing where you will make up something according to their what you think their needs are? Or you don't
I would love it if people said, look, can you just come with your sprayer? I've got a compost heap here. Can we make a compost tea or an extract, and can you spray it onto my land? I would absolutely love that. And that is definitely something I would encourage people to do, but that's probably a little bit more tricky. Same with plant extracts and all those things. So what I do offer is I'm actually an applicator for Agri-C. So I can source all their products, which are mainly seaweed based, and then they have a fish one as well, that have gone through their extensive laboratory testing. So it's nothing that I have brewed up at home in my own containers, because my small batches, if I send them off to a lab, I can get them tested, but the cost is just way too high for me to do that with every barrel of ferment that I make. So I use my own stuff on my own land, and I'm happy to provide people with compost and vermicast extracts that I make, but all the seaweeds and the fish hydrolysates and all of those things, I just from a liability point of view, I'm using Agri-C products, but I could also use anyone else's. Like I've had a really good chat with Fishit not that long ago, and they said they would be very happy to do the same, to just, supply me with their product when I need it, and then I kind of sell it on or pass it on to the customer in a sprayed out form, because that way I've got all the lab testing behind me, and I know I'm not going to accidentally kill something on a paddock because that would be my worst nightmare, spraying a paddock and then it going brown. It has never happened, and it's quite unlikely for that to happen. I do have a microscope and I chuck things under there and have a look at it and try to work out what I'm seeing, but I'm learning these things. I'm so far away from knowing it all, or knowing even enough to feel that I can brew something up and then put it onto someone else's land. So that I'm a bit careful there, just because I'm still early on in that learning process, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've got Agri-C, and then I've got sulfur and carbon who are there. I can put suspended lime in there, or gypsum. Just, I just source that through farmlands in smaller bags so I can handle it. That sort of stuff. And seeds I buy from all sorts of different seed providers. Whatever people want that I believe the sprayer can handle, I'm happy to bring it out for them. And if they, have their own big barrel of thistle tea or nettle tea or comfrey or whatever, that'd be great. I would really love that, because once again, that would be the plants that have actually come from their land, and we're putting them back onto the land. And it doesn't get any better than that, I feel.
Yeah, but there might be a need for education there. Maybe if you offer some workshops through the community classroom and do the workshops on that exact idea, right? Where you get your barrel from, this is how you cut the top off, and then you go and harvest your weeds like this, and you can talk through nettle tea and comfrey tea and a general weed tea. You can talk about all those different things, and then you might inspire people to go away and go and make something, and then they'll ring you up when they're ready to spray it out, and then you just go there and spray it out for them.
That's a great idea, actually. Yeah, I could definitely try that out. And I think another thing that is potentially quite helpful for all those that haven't really given soil health a lot of thought yet is that, for me as the business owner in this case, I'm really happy to come and visit people's land and have a look at it and give them my opinion on stuff, and then they can either go with it or not. But, and like I take a spade and we do a little VSA together and have a look at what's there and what's not there, and is there compaction, or is there maybe other things that might need addressing, all of that. And I also think it's quite good to have someone there who sees the bigger picture, because obviously just applying, say, a seaweed extract or an extract of EM or something like that is not going to fix your problem, whatever your problem is. Usually there's something that is not going ideal with the way that the land's being grazed, or that the land is being treated in one way or the other, whether there's a lot of traffic going over it, or just there's so many factors to healthy soil, plant diversity, and all those things. Yeah, I think that's where it's still quite helpful possibly for people to have somebody who's kind of spends a lot of time thinking about this sort of stuff and is really interested in finding good solutions. But I'm hoping that we'll have more and more people emerge from our communities who will be as passionate as you and I are about these things, and once you're passionate, you will learn. There's no way around it, is there?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh, and soon enough, I think your results, when they do start showing themselves, they'll become obvious, and people will be ringing you up all the time and saying, "Hey, come over here and fix my land."
Yeah.
I mean, I think even my small experience in your area, I offered a kind of a mentoring service to people, and I had a few people get me to come and have a look at their land, and I think people are after other people's input, because it's a huge challenge when you get a piece of land, especially if you are from the city or you don't have a soil background or a farming background. People do need advice and even just to bounce ideas off. So I think it's great that you're putting yourself out there and making yourself available to go and help people. It's great.
It is, and it's great fun, and it's awesome learning for me, because wherever I go, every piece of land is so different to mine. Again, there's similarities, and then there's things that are quite different, or they have different grazing communities on their land, and so much that we can learn, that we can all learn from each other. And I'm definitely learning heaps from whoever I talk to and wherever I go.
Yeah.
It's great.
I was wondering what your husband's role in the homestead is.
Oh, yes, he does all the things I want him to do. He's amazing. Like, he fixes all the water pipes and the gates and yeah, does all of that. But he is he's very passionate. He's a very passionate hunter, and he's actually a chef, so he brings a lot of passion for food. He's funny like that, because I have this thing about I really need to know where it comes from and what sort of health benefits are in the food, but he then adds this extra layer on top of that with, well, but it also needs to have a certain texture and a certain look, and he used to be a Michelin star chef, so he's just a bit crazy in that sense. But he loves meat, small goods, so he's really into sausages. He finds that the New Zealand sausages are, I can't even find a word for it, but coming from Germany, he's like, nah, these sausages are not edible. So we've always been making our own sausages. And he is he's a home field service provider. So he's just setting up a new facility here at home in a shipping container, so that he can not only kill our own and hang it here and process it here on site, but he can also provide that service to the community. It seems that there's a bit of a lack of home field service provider around, and a lot of people actually are sending their animals to the works because they can't find anyone to come and kill them on time. And we very strongly believe, and have tasted it so many times, that, I mean, one is an animal welfare thing, putting an animal on a truck and sending it to the works, and then it going through that process there, I think is not necessarily ideal. But it also comes back to human health, I think. The animals will have a certain amount of stress involved in the transportation, and then, sitting in the works waiting to be killed. And animals, I do feel that they know what is coming, and that there is a level of stress, which is reflected in the meat. And we know that the animals that we kill, they have the happiest life until they just drop dead while they're grazing. So for them, it's a really good experience, so to say, but it's a calm way to go, and the meat tastes so much better. Yeah, so that's something that he's working on at the moment so that he can come home again and be at home full time. At the moment, he's working off site, which is not ideal. So we're about to change that again, and it's going to come true this year. Hopefully in a couple of months' time, he'll be back at home.
Sure. All right. Yeah, I'm glad that you agreed to come on the podcast. I know you were waiting to have a bit more experience with the business, but I think it's good to get it out there anyhow. Been doing it now for, a couple of years or whatever. And yeah, I'd be really interested to see and hear how it goes. I'd love to come and see the cyclone spray in action one day when I do get back over your way.
Anytime. You're always welcome.
Yeah, thanks. I think it's a really cool idea and concept to be able to spray these kinds of things out on a large scale. And this kind of tow behind sprayer makes it super accessible. It's very easy on a quad bike or a ute or whatever, just to tow it around quite quickly, and you can get sprays out on a large area of land, and you can put back minerals, put back biology, put back all sorts of plant extracts and so on. So it's really interesting. So I really would love to interview you again in another year or two and see how it's been going and what your results are like. Yeah. Thanks very much for your time today, Annie. It's been a great chat.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been super fun, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you again in person one day soon, hopefully.
Awesome. All right.